All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cannabinoids and the People, number 30. This is my weekly video newsletter of the Substack newsletter I do, where I collect all of the cannabinoid science for people. So I thank you for tuning in. Please feel free to chime in with any questions if you want. One announcement is that I'm also starting to do YouTube Shorts as well. I really like the TikTok format. I have a book talk that has been going really well, but they are very anti-cannabis. So YouTube is not, and I'm going to use YouTube Shorts and start building up my network here. So any likes and clicks and subscriptions mean a lot. It's hard to get started on new networks, so your help is appreciated. I'm trying to keep the light out of my glasses. Should switch to the other pair. Hey, Claire. Hey, Claire. Eh, Well, we'll see. Maybe she'll hear me later. And the other announcement that I have is that I am the new EU correspondent for Weed Talk News, which is a bunch of different correspondents that get together each week and issue something on Fridays. So there's a link to that in the description of this. So far it's been really interesting. I like the people that are doing the work as well, and I look forward to paying attention to EU news. We also have sponsorship slots available for that. And the last thing I'll say is the sponsorship slot for this one is filled by PlusCBD oil. So I worked for PlusCBD oil for about 3 years before I started off on my own, and I still do some work for them as well. And they agreed to sponsor this show as well as my newsletter. And so I know from the inside that they make really excellent CBD. It's great because it's full spectrum. It has everything else that goes in the plant, the minor cannabinoids, the terpenes, the fatty acids. But it's not only CBD that they make. What makes them really special is they also have a THC product with 2.5 milligrams in a capsule or a gummy, which is a perfect amount, especially for an older person who is getting started. THC can make so much of a difference. It can really help supercharge your CBD as well. They also have an immune product that has PEA in it. If you've been paying attention to my work, I really believe in PEA. It's an endocannabinoid. I think it's going to be the next big thing in dietary supplements because there's so much evidence for it. Now, not quite as much as CBD, but it is a staggering amount of work proving how good PEA is for people. So, here, let me text my wife to bring my other glasses. Let's see if that works. Hold on for me with a second. So this is kind of fun. Okay, thanks. And so PlusCBD makes really great products. You can just check them out at pluscbd.com. And so let's switch to the actual meat and potatoes of what we're doing here today. This is Cannabinoids and the People newsletter number 30. And the first thing I'm going to do is recap the IACM conference, the International Association of Cannabinoid Medicine. They are a conference that's been around for a long time in Europe. And it's founded by Dr. Franho Grotenhermen, who is this German who is just pushing the ball forward so strongly. And also with Dr. Ethan Russo, who is infamous in this cannabis world in the States. And so the conference has been going on for a long time. I learned a lot of great science at it this week. And it was also great to meet more European people in on this. Here she is. Thank you so much. My lovely wife. She exists. So the one person that was presenting was Dr. Vincenzo DiMarzo, who is actually one of the top 1 cited scientist on the entire planet. So he just happens to be an endocannabinoid science researcher, but he's one of the best scientists on the planet. He's also a very friendly, engaging Italian chap who you just like. He gave me an interview years ago. You can hear on the Greener Grass podcast on my site, lexpelger.com. He talked about the endocannabinoid ohm. So most people know about the endocannabinoids. You have anandamide and 2-AG in your brain and body, 2 important neurotransmitters. But there's so much more than that. It consists of over 200 different mediators. 15 different receptors are involved, and about 35 different enzymes is what we know so far. And so the endocannabinoids are lipids. They're fats. That's what makes them so good in the cell, because they're very subtle messengers. And so even small changes in lipid levels can be detected by your cells and be used to transmit messages, such as neurotransmission. So he has a paper that I linked to in my newsletter about how this relates to gut health, because we have a huge number of endocannabinoid receptors in our guts. And one of the things is our endocannabinoids, as well as CBD and THC, they interact with serotonin. We have more serotonin in our gut than we do in our brain. Even though we always hear about it as a neurotransmitter of happiness, we have tons of serotonin in our gut. And so he writes about how this influences our mental health. We always hear about the gut brain axis. Well, if the endocannabinoids help to fix your gut, it can help to fix mental health disorders. Because usually when people have serious psychiatric conditions, there's also a gut thing going on too. Is it the cause? Probably not, but helping the gut could help things overall. So that's a cool paper that's worth checking out. Also, there was a poster there. Posters are a way that scientists present their data, new data that's unpublished, but they want their colleagues to know about. And so this poster was the winning poster at the conference of the 43 posters that were there. I have a link. You can read all of the posters that were at the conference for free, which is cool. The winning poster was about using THC and CBD oil for patients with dementia, and people with severe dementia. The cool part about this was, for one, of the 19 patients in this study, none of them left because of adverse reactions. And there were no serious adverse events from using THC and CBD in old people. You always worry about THC with older people and it being too much, but if you slowly titrate them up, it's usually fine. You build up resistance. They also get used to the effects. You have to go slow and be careful. So there was no negative side effects, but they had clinical improvements in their rigidity, their agitation, their behavioral manifestations that are problematic for their caretakers. They had less use of prescription medicine, which is always huge at that age, and it was easier for their caregivers to take care of them, and which can be quite a difficulty for patients with severe dementia. The other part of the study that was really fascinating was they had a sociological arm where they went and interviewed the families before and after. And beforehand, the families were very interested. They weren't too scared of the THC thing, which was interesting because sometimes that can be fearful for people. And afterwards, the families were just so grateful. So often they had their relatives come back to them in some kind of way. They had more meaningful interactions again because they got them to calm down, and also because THC and CBD help grow new brain cells and new brain connections. This is something the cannabinoids do. This is something the classic psychedelics do. And so anything with neurodegeneration, the cannabinoids are helpful. They're worth taking. Even if you don't notice giant effects, they're helping to protect the brain from damage getting worse. I think they're a great vitamin that you can be taking every day. If you're giving someone 20 pills a day for their dementia, throw some CBD capsules in there as well. The other winning poster that I really liked, the preclinical poster, so not in people, in a rat brain, they gave them CBD, and this increased the nerve growth factor BDNF. And if you're into the brain, BDNF is huge. You hear about it all the time. It helps to grow new brain connections. It is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and it's important for in this brain region they were doing it in. It was the medial prefrontal cortex. So this is an area that's important for memory, learning, and slow wave sleep. And one dose of CBD increased the levels of BDNF in that brain area, and hence formed stronger connections there. And so it speaks to how the cannabinoids can help so much for neurodegeneration. And this is the kind of stuff you can't study in a human brain because you can't sacrifice them afterward and start measuring molecule levels, but you can in a rat brain. And we're very similar. There's not much difference between all of us. There's also a great poster on CBD for treating migraines in animal models. There was a poster about the skin keratinocytes. Keratinocytes are skin stem cells, and it's a very rigorous process of these skin stem cells constantly regenerating themselves in your skin and differentiating until they get out to the outer layer of your skin in this locked pattern. It's very important for skin health because your skin replaces itself every month. It's a hell of an important process. And in these skin stem cells, CBD in general reduce their inflammation and help them to stay younger and to work better. It's why CBD topicals are so important. There's two last ones I want to mention. One is Dr. Kripa, who's a renowned scientist in this realm. He presented his research on CBD for healthcare practitioners who are burned out by COVID. he actually said he got it in the perfect time. It was in the midst of an intense wave of COVID. People were really burned out, and his clinical trial showed that CBD therapy reduced symptoms of burnout and emotional exhaustion among healthcare professionals working with patients during the pandemic. Furthermore, their follow-up study showed that the anti-anxiety effects continued for up to a month after the participants stopped taking the CBD. And so it speaks to how great CBD is for anxiety in general and for things like emotional exhaustion. Not just being slightly nervous, but getting to that deep, you don't have anything left kind of feeling because it's been months of pounding at your psyche. And so CBD helped in this clinical trial. Then the most unexpected talk for me, and one of the most powerful for sure, was Dr. Gudrun Lorenz Eberhardt. And she is a German doctor, and she talked about CBD for menopause. And menopause is such a constellation of symptoms in the body. And she worked so closely with her patients. She's the kind of doctor you're just sure you would be lucky to have, who listens well, who has a keen knowledge of how to use cannabinoids and other drugs. And so she said for the hormonal changes in menopause, CBD is just worth trying for so many things. She has seen it help for the hot flashes that occur up to 50 times a day. And these are caused by disturbances in the hypothalamus of the brain, which is a temperature regulation area that has many cannabinoid receptors. And so CBD helped to balance that area out again and reduce the number of hot flashes. She also knows that dizziness and headaches are something that happen with menopause. And she recommended peppermint and CBD oil on the temples and also orally for the CBD oil to help with those things. Other symptoms are heart palpitations, joint problems, and rheumatic diseases. Those are common to menopause, and she's seen CBD help people with all of those. With the heart specifically, in general, you don't have many cannabinoid receptors in your heart. But when your heart is having problems, it shoots up the number of cannabinoid receptors as a response to help with things. And so to activate them with cannabinoids from the plant is a way to help your own heart help itself. Menopause is also renowned for sleep disturbances. CBD is excellent for sleep. And then for the inflamed aging skin that can happen, full spectrum CBD topicals applied directly can help. And actually, that is something that commonly happens in the vulva area. And she said for some people, it just changed everything. There was so much pain or itchiness or just problems that were both embarrassing and uncomfortable. And she saw CBD just change women's lives with this. And the last thing that it makes sense for is CBD for osteoporosis, because all women experience bone loss through the process of menopause with the hormonal changes. The only difference is how much bone loss they are having. And CBD is helpful for bone growth. Your bones are constantly have this back and forth between the osteoclasts and the osteoblasts. They're the yin and yang of eating the old bone material to keep it strong and putting down new bone material on top. And so CBD helps to push it towards the bone creation side and just helps to keep bones healthy and strong. So anyway, just making sure no one's asked any questions yet. Okay, cool. So that is a recap of the IACM conference, which was a great conference, as I said. And for next month, you can buy access to it and watch all the talks online. And there are a lot of great talks. If you're into this stuff, it is worth watching. So let's go up and talk about the best of cannabinoid science that happened this week. And just so you know, I've only been covering the science in these because I want to try to keep these to about 20 minutes. It seems like the right amount of time, but I also cover news and psychedelics and things like that. So if you want to hear more about that side from me via this live stream, that's cool. Just let me know. But otherwise, let's take the science because that's what I do best. There's other great newsletters for news. I would say Marijuana Moment is the very best daily newsletter for cannabis news. It's a source of a lot of where I get my information. But it is nice to say that no one else is putting out as much cannabinoid science as I am. I'm going through all the Google alerts, all the PubMed alerts. I have everything set up to double check the system. So I don't think I'm missing hardly anything that's coming out. And I try to get almost everything in here except some of the really esoteric cannabinoid testing stuff. But pretty much it all gets into this because I need it for my data later. I produce content for companies. So I mentioned my company, White Whale Creations, just to put a plug in for that and my brand new business cards that I took to the conference. So with White Whale Creations for cannabis and psychedelic companies and CBD companies, I create content for them. So I do writing. I make things understandable for new people. I also do in-depth writing that has all the science. I create science archives, and I'm also can run newsletters for people. And if you're looking to make a podcast, that's what I'm excellent at. And so if you want a psychedelic or a cannabis podcast, I'm looking for one good partner. I have space in what I'm up to now for one podcast to put out weekly for one company. So I'm looking for a really good partner. So if you know of any, reach out and let me know their names or let them know about me. So anyway, on to the cannabinoid science. And we mentioned that study about CBD oil for dementia patients. That same week that study came out, another study from Israel came out as well. The study I talked about that I saw in Switzerland, that actually came out just last week. And then this week, one came out from Israel that said pretty much the same thing: effects of rich cannabinoid oil on behavioral disturbances in patients with dementia. And this one, though, was a placebo-controlled randomized clinical trial. So the other one was an observational trial, which means that the doctors give the medicine, everybody knows that the medicine is being given, and you look to see if people get better. But there's always a placebo effect because people know that they're getting a new medicine. This one was placebo controlled, which means nobody involved knew who was getting the medicine. And still it showed that whether you're getting a sugar pill, if you got a sugar pill, you didn't change much. You got a little bit better. If you got the CBD pill, it helped, and it helped a good bit. I got into this field because of CBD for Parkinson's and my grandmother's health. And I wish I'd known more earlier than I did. And it is why I push CBD for older folks. If you're over 50, it's kind of crazy not to be taking 50 milligrams of CBD per day. And for people who are elderly and really up there, and anybody with newer generation should absolutely be taking cannabinoids every day. It's so good for brain health, and there's so much science on that. If you want to see more, I have it on cvresearch.info. That's a site I created for PlusCBD oil, CV Sciences, and it collects a lot of the data on why cannabinoids are so good at protecting your brain. And that's one more plug I'll throw in here is I do one-on-one counseling with people. So if you know anyone in your life who could benefit from cannabinoids or microdosing psychedelics, I do consultation sessions with them, and I listen to what their situation is. We lay out a game plan of what to take and when, and I send them a write-up walking them through how to buy this stuff, when to take it, what to look for, and really try to make it as easy as possible to explore cannabinoids for health. I also do this for healthcare practitioners, so for doctors and nurses and people in acupuncture. Feel free to reach out. I sit down with you for an hour and I let you know how to do this stuff to help your patient's health. I've gained a lot more interest in that lately. So another thing that happened this week was a series of case studies on using CBD for anxiety. This was a bunch of clinical cases in Mexico. This one's cool because it just laid out a bunch of individual stories of why this works. We have so much big data about CBD for anxiety, and this paper is worth reading because it goes through individual people's stories of how they explored CBD with their doctor and how exactly it affected them. Did it change everything for everybody? No, of course not. But for some people, it changed their lives in a huge way. And for others, they at least found it worth taking because it took the edge off. I also like this paper because it has an especially well-done chart on the many biochemical actions of CBD. Dr. Vincenzo De Marzo calls CBD a Swiss Army knife because it doesn't just work at the cannabinoid receptors. It also involves with a serotonin receptor, dopamine receptor, opioid receptors, glutamate, glycine, GABA. The PPA are nuclear receptors, which control genetic transcription. So that one's huge. That alone, you take CBD and it turns on and off certain genes. So you're just dropping all these new molecules into the cell. That's why it's so hard to tell how CBD helps sometimes, because we can see in the rat or the person that the CBD is helping, but how exactly it's helping. Which of these 10 major pathways is it helping by? I don't know. It takes a lot of detective work sometimes to figure that out. So that's why the next paper is so important, I think. It's a review of the promise of cannabinoids for people with early neurodevelopmental disorders, such as intellectual disability, autism spectrum disorders, tics, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorders. So especially young kids and adolescents. CBD can be really helpful with people that have some severe issues going on. Uh, the endocannabinoid system is a general homeostasis system for the body. It interacts with most of the other systems in the body, especially your hormone system, your immune system, and your neuronal system. And so, adding balance to the body when the body is so unbalanced because of a severe disease going on, the endocannabinoids can help. And so, this is a great review of these sometimes very rare neurodevelopmental disorders and how the cannabinoids can help. And the one that I'm sure got some eyeballs as I posted this week, it is a review of how moderate amounts of cannabis may improve female sexual function. Sometimes it is funny to see science about stuff where you could just ask some old hippies. Um, that's more in the psychedelic world that I see this, that I see review articles or clinical research. It's like, yeah, anybody from the 70s onward could just tell you this is true. And this one's a little bit of the same. It's great that they're doing studies on it. So, like, people who only will listen to studies will listen. But, like, yeah, in general, cannabis can help women have better sex. Though the opposite side of the coin is that in general, it's found that men, it can make performance not as well and have trouble with performance. Of course, it's never black and white and can help both genders. And of course, gender is a very fluid spectrum of gray, and so you never know how it's going to help. I mean, they're for people in the middle or off of this spectrum. Cannabis is worth trying. It can so much of sex is in the head, and it might be that the cannabis is going to help your head, which is going to help everything else. So there is a cool review finding that topical CBD may cause hair growth. And I've been waiting to see more about this because I know that our hair follicles have a lot of cannabinoid receptors, but it's not exactly clear what that means. And so this was a nice review article that said it seems like CBD can help your hair to grow back. And some people, not a huge number, had pretty remarkable hair restoration from CBD. But it seems like THC might make hair go away, or even very high levels of CBD may cause hair loss. And so I think a regular topical CBD that you buy from a company is probably around the right level of what would be helpful. And it's just don't make a super potent CBD and try it on your own head. But as usual with cannabinoids, their array of effects is complex and sometimes contradictory. And a CB1 receptor and CB2 receptor can often work against each other. And so it is, it's there's a lot of yin and yang, positive, negative feedback loops in the endocannabinoid system, and it can make it complex to be sure what's going to happen, especially because everyone's endocannabinoid system is different. Okay, any questions? Just checking. Good. 22 minutes. So, couple more here, and we can finish up. And there's a well done review this week of cannabis in the lungs that confirms the common wisdom that while smoking cannabis may increase your chances of bronchitis, it does not cause chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and it probably doesn't cause lung cancer. Um, in fact, if you talk to Dr. Tashkin, who is the UCLA doctor who specializes in lungs and is probably the world's expert on cannabis in the lungs, he has said that smoking cannabis actually slightly decreases your chances of lung cancer. So is cannabis great for your lungs? I mean, absolutely not. It's constantly putting a smoked plant material in there. It's not great, but it's not even on the same wavelength as tobacco smoke. And it hasn't stopped me from smoking it, most nights since I was 18. But it's not great for your lungs. And if you have lung problems, there's other ways to ingest it that can be easier on you. So, but in general, the common wisdom is your worst thing you're doing is increasing your chance of bronchitis. Um, so cancer is something that I always have a bunch of entries on every week. The one I wanted to highlight this week is it's a demonstration of the entourage effect. The idea that the cannabinoids and the terpenes in a full spectrum cannabis plant work better than those individual components alone. THC and CBD are both worth using against many types of cancer, the studies have shown. But this study shows if you add the terpenes in, they are better at killing cancer cells and they're better at lowering inflammation in the area as well. And so just one more confirmation that it does make sense to use the whole plant oftentimes. And so thing that is put to rest a little bit. There is always a concern with CBD getting converted to THC in the various ways that we ingest it, because if you know the chemistry, CBD is 2 rings with a tail. THC is 3 rings with the same tail. And so all you have to do to make CBD into THC is to a little bit of acid, some heat, and you close up that ring and you converted CBD to THC. And there's a fear that if you use a vape pen, you might be converting some of your CBD to THC and getting high and or failing a drug test. But they did some naturalistic use settings in this study in joints and e-cigarettes. And if you have a CBD only material, it seems like none of that's getting converted to THC when you ingest it. The other fear is that in your gastric fluids in your stomach, it's very acidic in your stomach. Maybe the CBD is converting to THC in your gastric fluid. And this has been a debate for a long time. But for one, this study adds to it's an in vivo experiment where they tried to see if they could get CBD to convert to THC in gastric fluid, and it didn't work. And so while I know some people think this might happen, the scientists that I respect the most almost shake their heads at this. Like, no way this is happening. So in general, I do not think that this is a thing that's happening. But it's nice to see another in vivo experiment confirm that. And the last thing I want to talk about is bees and butterflies. So you hear about stuff with bees and CBD some, and it's just really pleasant because you feel bad for the bees these days. So CBD supplementation has a positive effect on the proteome, the proteins, and the immune system of honeybees. And so if you want to give your honeybees a immune system boost, give them some CBD, which is pretty sweet. And I did find a fun classic from 1980. And in this study, they figured out that butterflies can distinguish between different cultivars of cannabis. Cultivars is another word for strains. It's a technical word for strains. Strains is not a real word. That's only in the cannabis world. That's not anything a botanist would say. But they could tell the difference between a cultivar of Turkish cannabis versus Mexican cannabis, which is pretty cool that butterflies can do that. So those are some of the most interesting science pieces from the week. I think I have about 80 or 90 other articles lower on in the newsletter, so feel free to check those out. This is Cannabinoids and the People. I am Lex Pelger of White Whale Creations. Feel free to look up my work online, and if you'd like to share this or like this or subscribe, it goes a long way as I'm building my way up on this platform. So thanks so much, and see you next week.